Honorable members, I declare this 69th sitting of the National Assembly of the 12th Parliament of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana to be duly constituted and in session. The clerk will lead us in prayers.
Almighty God, we are here gathered together. We most humbly beseech thee to guide us in all our consultations. Put us made together, build a land where knowledge is free, where the mind is without fear, the head is held high, and where words come from the depth of truth. Grant us, O God, an aid and guidance, so that we may deal justly with the several causes that come before us, laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and personal preferences, so that the result of our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion, the preservation of justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the President, the peace and prosperity of Guyana. Grant us, O God, the vision so to lead, that all the people of this fair land may enter in that state of brotherhood and unity, where the mind is led forward by thee in the ever-widening thought and action.
Honorable members, please be seated.
Messages from the President. Announcements by the Speaker.
Good afternoon, honorable members. First, on your behalf and on behalf of my family and I, it is with a very sad and sorrowful heart that I extend our condolences to the honorable member, Dr. Jennifer Westford, on the tragic loss of her husband, Brigadier Gary Beaton, and also to the families of Colonel Michael Shudud, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Charles, Lieutenant Colonel Sean Welcome, and Sergeant Jason Khan. I also join you in prayers for the full recovery of Lieutenant Andy Crawford and Corporal Dwayne Jackson, the two Guyana Defense Force officers who survived that ordeal. Also in the last 2 weeks, let us join in expressing condolences to the families of former MP and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Rudy Insinali, and the former Member of Parliament from Canal, Tal Chan. Please join me in standing to observe a minute's silence for these fallen heroes and members of Parliament. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Honorable members, our National Assembly over the past 3 years has been very active among the organizations which bring together parliaments of the world. We participate actively and also at the executive levels in the Interparliamentary Union, which was established in 1889 and has 180 members. The Parliamericas, that is the Parliament of the Assemblies of the Organization of American States, and also we participate actively in the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Last year, at the 146th Assembly of the IPU in Kigali, Rwanda, I addressed the plenary on the issue of peace, and I said, I'll quote from part of that address: while the world may look at the Caribbean Guyana and say that this is an area of peace, that it is a paradise, an example for the world, we have had our challenges. In six, the past 60 years of post-colonialism, we've had ethnic conflicts in my own country. We've had a minister assassinated. In Haiti, we had seen the assassination of a president. In Grenada, there were political repression and two coups. In Jamaica in 1980s, over 800 persons were killed in general elections. And in Trinidad and Tobago, that parliament was stormed by persons with their own agenda, MPs killed and a coup attempted. And I noted at least three countries in our region have border disputes that can ignite into aggression. Honorable members, I thank Speaker Woods of Belize for being involved in the Belizean government issuing a strongly worded position in support of Guyana's sovereignty. Similarly, I thank Ministers Pia Roll and Foreign Minister Fred Archer of the Bahamas for their involvement in writing their government's strong support for Guyana. On December 7th, 2023, Parliamericas issued its own statement on our border controversy, which I would like to read. Quote, Ottawa, Canada, December 7, 2023, Parliamericas, closely following the most recent developments in the border issue between the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and in view of the consultative referendum held on December 3rd in Venezuela, Parliamericas call on the parties to settle their differences through the appropriate courts and tribunals of the international justice system. Parliamerica recalls that international instruments such as the Charter of the United Nations and the Charter of the Organization of American States enshrine the sovereignty and independence of states, establish the faithful fulfillment of obligations arising from treaties and other sources of international law, and affirm that the territory of a state is inviolable and may not be subject to military occupation or other measures of force taken by another state, directly or indirectly, for any reason whatsoever, even temporary. Parliamerica urges that honoring the tradition of peaceful resolution of differences in the Americas and the Caribbean, any international dispute arising between states will be resolved through peaceful challenges. End quote. So that was Parliamericas, and tomorrow we have a board meeting, which again, our controversy will be discussed. Mr. Clerk?
Presentation of petitions, presentation of papers and reports, etc.
Honorable members, I present to the Assembly 1. Report of the Auditor General to the National Assembly on the public accounts of Guyana and on the accounts of ministries, departments, and regions for the fiscal year ending 31st December 2022. 2. Performance Audit Report on an assessment of the Ministry of Education's Hinterland School Feeding Program. 3. Performance Audit Report on the implementation of the International Health Regulations 2005. 4. performance audit report on a review of the Ministry of Labor's occupational safety and health inspection process. Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I present to the Assembly the annual report of the Public Utilities Commission for the year 2022.
Thank you, PM. Honorable Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I present to the Assembly, 1, the annual reports of the Women and Gender Equality Commission for the years 2021 to 2022, audited financial statements of the Integrity Commission for the years ended December 31st, 2020 and 2021, annual report of the Ethnic Relations Commission for the year 2022, and the audited financial statements of the Integrity Commission for the year ending December 31st, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to present to this Honorable House the following papers, reports, and other documents. 1, Mid-Year Report 2023. The said report, of course, having already been made publicly available some time ago. 2, Government Notice number 4 of 2023 regarding notification receipts of all petroleum revenues paid into the Natural Resource Fund during the period 1st of July to 30th of September 2023. 3, Agreement on support to the poultry sector between the Government of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and Republic Bank of Guyana Limited, signed on 19th September 2023. 4, Agreement on support to the poultry sector between the Government of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and Citizens Bank Inc., signed on the 31st of October 2023. 5, Agreement on support to the poultry sector between the Government of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and Demerara Bank Limited, signed on signed on the 21st of August 2023. 6, Agreement on support to the poultry sector between the Government of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and the Guyana Bank for Trade and Industry Limited, signed on 14th September 2023. 7, Financial Paper number 4 of 2023, Supplementary Estimates Current and Capital Advances made from the Contingencies Fund totaling $1,899,647,334 for the period from 1st of October 2023 to 8th of December 2023, and 8, Financial Paper number 5 of 2023, Supplementary Estimates Current and Capital totaling $24,044,095,908 for the period ending 31st December 2023. And Mr. Speaker, in relation to the last 2 items, that is to say the Financial Papers number 4 and 5 of 2023, I wish to signify our intent that these financial papers be considered at the next sitting of the National Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister of Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to present to the Assembly audited financial statement of the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority for the year ended 31st of December 2019.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Reports from committees. Oral questions without notice. Questions on notice.
Honorable members, there are 15 questions on today's order paper. Questions number 1 to 10 are for written replies, and questions number 11 to 15 are for oral replies. For written replies, we have questions 1 to 3 are in the name of the Honorable Member, Ms. Annette Ferguson, and are for the Honorable Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance. Questions numbers 4 and 5 are in the name of the Honorable Member, Ms. Tabitha Sarabo Halley, and are for the Honorable Minister within the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. Questions number 6 to 10 are in the name of the Honorable Member, Ms. Amansa Walton Desir, and are for the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs. The answer to all of these 10 questions have been received and have, in accordance with our standing orders, been circulated. For oral replies, question number 11, the Honorable Member, is in the name of the Honorable Member, Ms. Annette Ferguson. Unfortunately, the Honorable Member earlier today had been involved in an unfortunate vehicular accident. I'm told she's okay, but have asked that this be deferred. The questions in the name of Ms. Ferguson, Honorable Member, will be deferred along with the motions in her name. So that's correct, Honorable Chief Whip, for the opposition. Thank you. Question number 13, Honorable Members, is from Ms. Tabitha Sarabo Hali. You may now ask your question, Honorable Member, to the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can the Honourable Minister state whether the government has taken any steps to modernize the institutional and legislative framework associated with migration in Guyana since 2020?
Honorable Minister of Home Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and honorable members. I want to thank the honorable member for her question. In respect of the institutional framework related to migration, both the Immigration Department and the Immigration Services Department have been modernized. Staffing has increased. The work that they are doing are now, particularly for the Immigration Services Department, is being put on electronic platforms for proper recovery of information from the databases. With respect to the legislative framework, since 2020, we have not had a specific instrument or bill placed in the Parliament itself, but we are working at issues relating to the migration policy, of which I am sure a bill or bills will be laid in this Parliament.
Honorable Member.
Mr. Speaker, I struggle to hear half of what was said. So forgive me if my follow-up is seeking clarity on what was already said, because I wasn't hearing everything here. But can the Honourable Minister state whether there has been any formal collaborative process, whether any formal collaborative process has been established between Home Affairs and Legal Affairs and Foreign Affairs to deal with the changes that may be needed in the legislative framework as relates to migration?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have had discussions from time to time between the three parties the honorable member mentioned, but as yet, as we work on the issues of the total migration policy package, we have not made a subcommittee of itself to deal with it in specificity.
Honorable Member, Ms. Hali.
Just a further follow-up, sir. I understand that the legislative framework may take some time. That has not happened as yet. But has there been any new policy initiated by the Ministry of Home Affairs, given the obvious influx and increase in immigration into Guyana since 2020? Any new policy? Yeah, but you came into government in 2020.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, at the level of the ministry itself, on the question of policy, as it were, we have been working very hard to make sure that those who are purporting to be migrants to Guyana are indeed migrants to Guyana. We've had situations in the past where we inherited a situation where thousands of persons are coming to Guyana, purporting to be migrants, but not staying in Guyana. And if I refer only to the year 2019, some 19,000 or so persons of a particular country came through the country and cannot be accounted for. And that goes across the board for a number of countries. But we're working hard to make the work we do there more efficacious, and that it should have integrity, and that we should not have to resort to chasing down people and doing investigations. Even though we have a backlog in respect of that, if we want to properly understand what happened in the previous administration in respect of this matter, we do not want to repeat, and we work it to make sure that the system is much better managed and is outside of the influence of corruption at all levels.
Thank you, Minister. We are at question number 15. Honorable Member, Ms. Tabitha Sarabo Halley.
Sorry, you skipped question 14.
Sorry. 13 and 14 are so closely linked. I thought he was answering 14, but I'll give you an opportunity to ask 14 formally.
Thank you, sir. Can the Honorable Minister, same Minister of Home Affairs, inform this House of the number of registered Venezuelan migrants in region number 9 and in other regions as of June 16th and July 11th, 2023?
Honorable Minister.
The question, Mr. Chairman, is in two parts. I want to thank the Honourable Member again for her question. For Region 9, in the period, it was 1,348 persons. For Region 8, 10,671 persons for the reference period. For Region 2, 3,255 persons. Region 3, 1,114 persons. Region 4, 1,215 persons. Region 7, 4,099 persons. And Region 8, 80 persons.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Member, Ms. Halley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can the Honorable Minister inform the House of whether or not there's any process to determine the Venezuelan migrants, the numbers that you just stated, whether any of them have any military background as Venezuelans?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Persons come to Guyana at different levels of former occupation. And in a general sense, we wouldn't be able to say for each one of them who may have had a background in military or policing services. Certainly there are a few, we have some information. But I would say indeed that some checks are being made or are being made on some persons who we are aware would have come into the country.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Member, Ms. Halley.
Thank you, sir. Just backtrack a bit. The Honorable Minister did not indicate for region number 10 how many registered. Good afternoon, Ms. Giltashire. I hope you had a good day. Thank you.
Honorable.
Yes, the Honorable Minister did not indicate for Region 10, so I just want to clarify whether or not there are no Venezuelan migrants in Region 10. And just to follow up on what he said, whether or not the ministry has data that determines, that says to them clearly of the number of Venezuelan migrants that are here, whether or not they have any military background at all. If you have the data to support that, and they're following up with that information.
Honorable Minister of Home Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The data that we provided does not include Region 10 because Region 10 does not have a port of entry as per se in relation to people entering the country. On the question of military background, I think I answered that question adequately.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Member, Ms. Halley, question number 15. You may ask your question.
I have my mic on.
Go ahead, Ms. Honorable Member, Ms. Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to follow up, could the Honorable Minister say what is the government policy when it comes to documenting indigenous Venezuelans that are living within Guyana at the moment? I do note that you said, for example, in Region 7, there are 4,099 persons in your record. What is the policy when it comes to documenting indigenous Venezuelans that's living here, and how many of the 4,099 are indigenous Venezuelans?
Honorable Minister.
In relation to the number who may be coming from specific indigenous communities, I don't have the number at the moment, but we are aware of the Waros who are in the Northwest District, particularly in Region 2. In Region 9 itself, there are two groups of Venezuelan migrants who come from specific indigenous communities. They're mostly Waro and the Apanema, who come from the big reserve here, the Canawaima Reserve in Venezuela, in the southern part of that reserve.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Member, Ms. Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did not hear any specific method in which those persons are documented, but I do note that you spoke about the Northwest and the Waros there, and I'm asking this specifically because Region 7, Bartica, for example, there is just one location with over 30 Waros, so it begs the question of how many other persons. My next follow-up question is, how is the ministry working in collaboration with organizations, for example, HIAS, in making sure as much as we possibly can that when aid is given through such organizations, rogue elements are not given aid within our country?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. In relation to work with organizations, we have been working with some organizations. We are allowed to, or we partner with them when aid is being given to those communities. Generally, I would say that if you go to a big community, aside from the work which the police might have done, you won't necessarily know who is a rogue element in relation to that, but we are working with various organizations providing support to the communities.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you,
Mr. Honorable Member, Mr. Jordan.
Mr. Chair, just for clarity from the Minister, a few months ago we received information from the Minister of Foreign Affairs that in region number 5 there are no Venezuelan migrants. Could the Minister say whether from that time to now, if there are any, and if so, quite recently the police would have arrested one Venezuelan migrant in region 5 who is conducting a burger sales business, and he had the map of Venezuela with Guyana there, and with the entire Essequibo. And could the ministers further say what is the position with that Venezuelan, and if there are any other Venezuelans in region 5?
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, persons are registered as they come in, and when they do renewals at the places where they are. The question as to where they are once they will enter the country is a different matter, because their situation sometimes is quite fluid, and so there will be no surprise that you would find a Venezuelan migrant in Region 5. And the person with the card, I'm aware that the police took action to hold the card, have the insolent depiction of Venezuela removed. But they are able to move around the country too.
Sorry.
Honorable Member, Mr. Hola. Sorry, Mr.
So, could the minister say whether or not the ministry has any record as to how many Venezuelans are in region number 5, or if it stands as 0, as the Foreign Affairs Minister would have informed us through this House?
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Honorable Member, Minister.
I do not have here any number which relates to Venezuelans in Region 5. I'm sure that there are a few.
Thank you. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Could the Honorable Minister tell us if, in the light of the present circumstance, the ministry is considering any action to ensure that Venezuelans are not in heavy numbers in Essequibo region?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you to the honorable member for his question. I'm not sure what heavy numbers are, but Venezuelans and children of Guyanese who have become Venezuelans, who came in the country of Venezuela, are in the Essequibo territory. And so the numbers, other than certain other measures we've taken again to identify how much people, who they are and where they are, the normal procedures are being followed, and we have upped our identification of the communities and the actors, the persons in the communities. But I'm pointing out that you may meet a person who you may presume to be Venezuelan, but is a descendant of Guyanese. That there was a time when we had difficulties in this country, and thousands of Guyanese went over to Venezuela. Yeah, but we are not in special circumstances now with respect to it. Anyway, if I'm allowed to answer the question, we're speaking about Venezuelans in Essequibo, and I'm just pointing out that there are persons there who are direct descendants of Guyanese along with others.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Honorable Minister, there's a procedure for children of Guyanese coming from Venezuela to become citizens. They are citizens by birth, but they have to bring a Venezuelan birth certificate. There's a procedure. Could you allow me to finish the question?
I'm allowing you, sir.
Yeah. Could the ministers say how many people in Essequibo are children of Guyanese and entitled, and how many of them are not?
Honorable Minister of Home Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do not have those figures at the moment, but I can say that the procedure is being followed when it is brought to our attention.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Member Ms. Halley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just one final question for the Minister. We note that there are a number of Venezuelans coming that don't have any documentation. The question for the Minister is what procedure do those Venezuelans go through once they get here, and what documentation is given to them now that they're in Guyana?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is the same procedure which was established by the previous government. The ED card, regularly stamped, verified, updated in respect of those migrants.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, let me just bring your attention. We have another question, and the time for questions is 40 minutes. Honorable Member, Ms. Amansa Walton, this year.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A follow-up question for the Honorable Minister. I've made the observation that Finland closed its borders with Russia, and they did this on the premise that the government of Finland was concerned that it was what they called a hybrid operation, tantamount to what they said was a soft invasion of the country. And what they did is that they closed the borders and redirected all of the citizens to declare themselves at ports of entry. My question, therefore, can the minister say to this House whether the government is currently contemplating a system where migrants who are undocumented will be required to present themselves to the authorities so that they can be properly registered, issued with the relevant documentation, and therefore, numerically, we will have an accurate count. I say this because in Region 10, for example, the statistics that were proffered suggest that there are no Venezuelans in Region 10. Now, I happen to be a Lindoner and I know otherwise. And so there's clearly a disconnect between what we're saying in the House and what the reality is on the ground. And so my question is, how and what procedure will the government put in place to ensure that we have as accurate a count as possible, and whether this mandatory presentation of migrants to authorities to be duly registered is on the cards?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did say that the records that we have relate to persons who come to areas where they would contact immigration officers. And that in Linden itself, there isn't a place. It is not at the frontier or places where people come through. Say if people come through from the mouth of the of the Orinoco to Moruca or Perica, where they would be able to present themselves and be recorded and be given the appropriate ED card with information. So it is a bit different. There would be, of sure, perhaps, Venezuelans in Linden in Region 10 itself, who might have gone there for various other reasons. But in respect of what the question was asked for, I've given the answer already. In relation to people going to particular areas of to be recorded on entering the country, those places already exist. We have, of course, as a cliche that our borders are porous and so on and so forth. We're making efforts to, and in fact, we have to a certain extent, through the ministry itself, set up little patrol groups going through areas to identify people and log them to areas where they can be properly documented. That work is ongoing. But as I said, we're not in similar circumstances as some other countries.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Minister, could you say if there's an immigration center or office in Mabura which Venezuelans pass through, and what the record showed in terms of Venezuelans coming through Mabura area?
Honorable Minister of Home Affairs.
Usually, when persons are going through Mabura or Linden itself on the highway, they would have a manifest and a record, and they would have to show their documentation as they go or come, right? So there's that record. But in terms of entry, the record would have already been there in respect of their entry into the country. And that would be in region 9, of course, or the other regions to the west of the country, where they would have initially entered the country.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Member, Ms. Amanda Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have one.
Just a second. Mr. Speaker, can you say how much time is left on the minutes, please? How much time is left for the question?
Yes, 7 minutes.
7 minutes?
Honorable Member, Ms. Walton Dizio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I heard the Honorable Minister allude to a process. I am not sure that he'd answered my question, but I wanted to know, can the Minister advise whether, and I may have missed it, there have been any, for example, advertisements in the local news, the newspaper of wide circulation requiring Venezuelan migrants who may be undocumented to present themselves to authorities to be documented?
Honorable Minister of Home Affairs.
There has not been, in the press itself, if I remember, any specific thing related to Venezuelan immigrants. We have said, and we have put out in our, on social media and on our websites for the ministry, the request for people to come and be documented. And they put it out to those persons who are leaders or influencers in the various communities that they must come and document themselves. In fact, I would say that over the past 3 or 4 weeks, the amount of persons coming to be re-registered or to be documented again have increased perhaps tenfold.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Member, Mr. Manzo Walton Dizio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of notice, and the Honorable Attorney General could properly guide his colleague that the standard is a newspaper of wide local circulation. And so I want to recommend strongly that a notice
This is a questioning period, not a recommending period.
I will come to my question.
Come to the question.
Mr. Speaker, let me come to my question. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want to be advised by the Honorable Minister whether there are any legal consequences that will attach to persons failing to present themselves to be registered.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the, there are, of course, legal consequences. I want to remind the honorable member that we still have thousands of Guyanese who are still in Venezuela and in other places, and we should not be in a position, where we seem to be going off any particular group, particularly with respect to this group at this time.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Member Ms. Sarabahalu, can we move on to question number 15?
Thank you, sir. We shall move on to the Honorable Minister of Labor. Can the Honorable Minister state whether there has been any collaboration among the Ministry of Labor, Education, and Public Service to ensure that the scholarships being given to train, retrain, or upskill our citizens through the Goal and Grow initiatives are relevant to the skills needed in the short and medium term?
Honorable Minister of Labor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just to say that the answer to both questions is yes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much. Honorable Member Ms. Sarabuhani.
Thank you very much, sir. Can't say that I expected better. Can the Honorable Minister state what data or analysis was utilized to determine which areas people should be trained in or were retrained in or upskilled in? Could you say what data was used to determine the skills that we were training persons in?
Honorable Minister of Labor.
Mr. Speaker, what data was developed? The question is whether there is collaboration. I've answered it yes. The question is whether the collaboration has to do with the skills need in the short term and medium term, and I will dare say we are also dealing with the long term. And that is the answer to the question that has just been asked.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Member Ms. Hali.
Can the Honorable Minister state whether there is any attempt to conduct a skills gap analysis of the local labor market?
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Just to say that we work as a whole of government, and therefore, it is not just, let me say this, not just collaboration between Labor, Ministry of Education, and the other ministry. We have engaged and we are paying attention to all ministries where training are being done. And that is the whole of government policy regarding training and development.
Thank you very much. I'll allow you one more question, then we'll have to move on.
Mr. Speaker, it's obvious that the minister is not doing any skills gaps analysis. That's obvious. So, but based on the training that has happened from 2020 to now, I'm wondering whether there's any monitoring and evaluation being done to show what percentage of the skills training being done is leading to actual employment of those being trained. And if there's data that suggests that, if you can share that.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the answer to that question is yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I'm not going to ask another question, but just like letting you know, Mr. Speaker, that the minister just said that there's data and he's willing to share it. So we're going to look for that data. Thank you.
The minister didn't use your words.
Said yes, which encompassed everything that I asked.
It doesn't. And then I could have stopped you because that is not the minister that keeps these records. I could have said it's wrongly directed. So please. Mr. Clerk.
Statements by ministers, including policy statements.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to present an update on the developments relating to the aggressive steps that have been taken recently by the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela against the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, in this House on November 6, 2023, the Parliament of Guyana unanimously passed Resolution number 66 of 2023, reaffirming the recognition of the 1899 Arbitral Award and the 1966 Geneva Agreement. The National Assembly most significantly resolved to, 1, affirm the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the state of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. 2, reaffirm its recognition and acceptance of the 1899 Arbitral Award as a full, perfect, and final settlement of the boundary between Guyana and Venezuela. And Article 4, Subpara 2 of the 1966 Geneva Agreement has given the mandate to the United Nations Secretary General to select the means of resolving the controversy. 3, denounce as provocative, unlawful, void, and of no international legal effect the purported referendum in Venezuela that was scheduled for December 3, 2023. 4, support the government in its pursuit to ensure a peaceful and lawful resolution of the controversy before the International Court of Justice, and rejected the proposal to return to any form of dialogue with Venezuela on the controversy outside of the process before the court. 5, support the government's formal approach for the urgent protection of the International Court of Justice with the filing with the court a request for provisional measures for an order preventing Venezuela from taking any action to seize, acquire, or encroach upon, or assert, or exercise sovereignty over the Essequibo region or any part of Guyana's national territory, pending the court's final determination of the validity of the arbitral award. 6, call for the deepening of engagements among all national stakeholders on issues relating to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, particularly within the context of the meetings of the Bipartisan Ministerial Advisory Committee on the Guyana-Venezuela controversy. 7, encourage the citizens of Guyana to remain fully engaged on developments surrounding the controversy. And 8, express its appreciation to the partners and friends of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana for their support and expressions of affirmation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Guyana. Following the application made for provisional measures, the court heard pleadings from both parties on November 14, Guyana, and November 15, Venezuela. And on December 1, 2023, gave its order, which was unanimous, with all of the sitting judges voting in favor of it. The order stated that, 1, pending a final decision in the case, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela shall refrain from taking any action which would modify the situation that currently prevails in the territory in dispute, whereby the Cooperative Republic of Guyana administers and exercises control over that area. 2, both parties shall refrain from any action which might aggravate or extend the dispute before the court or make it more difficult to resolve. The court's ruling is legally binding on Venezuela. Both the UN Charter and the statute of the court, to which Venezuela is a party, require its strict compliance. The Secretary General confirmed this in a statement of 6 December 2023. Mr. Speaker, despite the court's order on December 5, 2 days after Venezuela conducted its referendum, on December 3, President Maduro announced a series of measures to give effect to the results of the referendum. Amongst those measures are creation of a High Commission for the Defense of Guyana Essequiba, led by Vice President Delcy Rodriguez. The proposal of law to the National Assembly to promulgate the organic law for the defense of Guyana Essequiba that includes the implementation of the 5 responses of the referendum, which are A, rejection of the 1899 award, B, the Geneva Agreement of 1966 as the only legal instrument, C, non-recognition of the jurisdiction and competence of the International Court of Justice, D, a mandate to secure the maritime border with a line of azimuth 70 degrees, starting from the mouth of the Essequibo, and E, the creation of the Guyana Essequiba state. The other measures include the publication as a decree in the Official Gazette of December 6, 2023, the creation of a new comprehensive defense zone, Zone D, Guyana Essequiba, that will depend economically and militarily on the Strategic Comprehensive Defense Region of Guyana. Designation of Major General Alexis Rodriguez Cabello as the sole authority of Guyana Essequiba, with political administrative headquarters in Tumaremo, Bolívar State. Proceed with the granting of license by Petróleos de Venezuela, PDVSA, and the Corporación Venezolana de Guyana, CVG, minerals for the extraction of oil, gas, and mineral resources in the territory of Guyana Essequiba. Dissemination of the map of Venezuela incorporating Guyana Essequiba into the national territory. Installation of an office of the Administrative Service for identification, migration, and emigration, Siami, in Tumaremo, Bolívar State, to carry out the census and give Venezuelan citizenship and national ID cards to the population. Promulgation of a special law to prohibit concessions in Venezuela to foreign oil companies that operate with Guyana in the disputed area of undelimited waters in the Essequibo with a 3-month deadline. Promulgation of the creation of environmental protection areas and national parks in the territory of Guyana Essequiba. Mr. Speaker, this is in blatant defiance of the court's order, which made clear that Venezuela is prohibited from annexing or trespassing upon Guyanese territory or taking any other actions, regardless of the outcome of its referendum on December 3. That would alter the status quo in which Guyana administers and controls the Essequibo region as an integral part of its sovereign territory under the arbitral award of 3 October 1899. Venezuela's actions also violate the most fundamental principles of international law enshrined in Article 2, Subpara 4 of the United Nations Charter, which make it unlawful for any state to use or threaten force against the territorial integrity or political independence of another state. The acquisition or attempted acquisition of another state's territory constitutes aggression, which violates obligations under preemptory norms of international law. Venezuela is now guilty of breaching all these obligations, and the actions it has announced will only further aggravate the situation. Faced with the direct threat of invasion of our territory, His Excellency President Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali reached out to his colleagues, heads of government of the Caribbean community, Brazil, Cuba, France, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America, as well as to the Commonwealth and the Organization of American States. He spoke with the United Nations Secretary General, informing him that Guyana intended to bring the matter to the attention of the Security Council. A formal communication was sent to the President of the Security Council on December 6th. We believe that we were on good grounds to approach the Council because under Article 94(1) of the United Nations Charter, Venezuela is obligated to comply with the decisions of the International Court of Justice that are legally binding on the parties. Under Article 94(2) of the Charter, if any party to a case fails to perform the obligations incumbent on it, the other party, in this case Guyana, may have recourse to the Security Council, which may, if it deems necessary, make recommendations or decide on measures to be taken to give effect to the judgment. Mr. Speaker, Guyana is pleased that its request to the Security Council was treated with urgency by that body. The Council met on December 8th in closed consultations to discuss the concerns raised in Guyana's communication to it, and was briefed by the Undersecretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs of the United Nations, Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo. We have also requested a special meeting of the Permanent Council of the Organization of American States. Mr. Speaker, on December 8, 2023, CARICOM heads of government, including our president, met in an emergency session to discuss the situation. They agreed on 4 significant points. I will read the first 4 paragraphs of their communique. CARICOM heads of government met in caucus on Friday, December 8th, to discuss the situation with regard to the Venezuela-Guyana border controversy and agreed to issue the following statement. CARICOM firmly supports Guyana in pursuance of the resolution of its border controversy with Venezuela through the process of the ICJ. Further, CARICOM urges Venezuela to reject the conservatory measures, to respect the conservatory measures determined by the ICJ in its recent ruling until a final resolution. CARICOM reiterates its commitment to the Caribbean as a zone of peace and the maintenance of international law. You will see that CARICOM heads agreed on the essential elements of Guyana's position. In that framework, they concluded as follows. Accordingly, CARICOM calls for a de-escalation of the conflict and for appropriate dialogue between the leaders of Venezuela and Guyana to ensure peaceful coexistence. The application and respect for international law and the avoidance of the use or threats of force. It is in this framework that the President has agreed to CARICOM's call for a de-escalation of the conflict through and I quote, appropriate dialogue between the leaders of Venezuela and Guyana to ensure peaceful coexistence, the application and respect for international law, and the avoidance of the use or threats of force, end of quote. Mr. Speaker, this House is unanimous in its resolve that the land boundary is not up for bilateral discussions. And the settlement of the matter is properly in the International Court of Justice, where it must remain until the court gives its final ruling. Until the court gives its final ruling on the merits of the case, which will be fully respected by Guyana. The President and government has reiterated this on numerous occasions, and it was underscored again by the President to the CARICOM heads of government that the case before the ICJ will not be an issue for bilateral discussions or talks. The government was therefore pleased that the statement issued by the leader of the opposition on December 9, 2023 supported its position. Venezuela continues to deliberately misinterpret the Geneva Agreement and even more fallaciously accuses Guyana of disregarding it. They claim that the Geneva Agreement is the only legal instrument to solve the controversy. Further, that Guyana should negotiate this solution with Venezuela. Venezuela has never offered any credible support or evidence for its contention of nullity and invalidity of the 1899 Arbitral Award, which settled the boundary between then British Guyana and Venezuela. Nor has it offered evidence to contradict the validity of the 1905 agreement signed by both parties, fixing the boundary along the line established in the 1899 Arbitral Award. To the contrary, between 1899 and 1962, Venezuela accepted and recognized that boundary as the international boundary between the two states, as reflected in all official Venezuela's maps published during the 60-year period. It is Guyana that has scrupulously adhered to the Geneva Agreement, and Venezuela, by rejecting the court as the means of settlement, which is in breach of its obligations under that agreement. The Geneva Agreement plainly does not require endless negotiations, perpetuating a permanent stalemate. It expressly provides assurances of a final settlement by vesting in the Secretary General the authority to choose the International Court of Justice as the means of settling the controversy in accordance with international law. That is what he has done. And the parties are bound by the Geneva Agreement to accept the ICJ as the means of settlement and to accept the judgment of the court as the final settlement of the controversy. Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate, Guyana will not be engaging in any dialogue with Venezuela on the settlement of the controversy that has been brought about by Venezuela's claim that the 1899 Arbitral Award, which settled the land boundary between then British Guyana and Venezuela, is null and void. As explained above, the method has been tried, tested, and has proved to be futile. It is now before the International Court of Justice, which allows both sides to present their case. Guyana is prepared to speak with Venezuela on any other aspect that may contribute to repairing the relationship between the two countries. The court's order of December 1, 2023 also stipulated that, and I quote, both parties shall refrain from any action which might aggravate or extend the dispute before the court or make it more difficult to resolve. End of quote. Guyana is acting in accordance with this expectation of the court. And it is in this context that the proposal to engage in dialogue on de-escalating tensions was considered. A lack of good neighborliness can only lead in one direction. One that, as a responsible member of this regional fraternity and the international community, we feel it is our duty to prevent. Despite the fact that Guyana did not start what we are now all consumed by. Mr. Speaker, let me reassure this honorable House that the government has not relented on its diplomatic efforts to explain the justness of our position and to reach out to regional and international partners to solicit their support in the face of the direct threat of invasion by Venezuela. We have intensified these efforts and remain appreciative of the solid and principled support, collective and individual, of our CARICOM brothers and sisters, as well as from our traditional allies and partners in the international community. Mr. Speaker, with reference to the migrant population from Venezuela, there was a wide-ranging discussion on this issue in this House at our last sitting when we debated the Guyana-Venezuela matter, and the government has put forward its position on the several measures being taken to receive migrants from Venezuela. It was explained that the government has put in place systems to ensure that these migrants are treated humanely. They are provided with all the social benefits that are available to the Guyanese population and are not discriminated against. I wish to reiterate, as was done by the government at the last sitting, that there should be no xenophobic tendencies displayed by our citizens. Furthermore, public allegations of the government giving citizenship to Venezuelan migrants for election purposes in violation of our laws should be rejected as baseless and mischievous. Mr. Speaker, we are heartened by the national pride that has been displayed over the past weeks, where Guyanese at home and in the diaspora from all walks of life have banded together in heart and hand to show their love for this land and to demonstrate loud and clear that Essequibo belongs to Guyana. I close by assuring this honorable House that the government will not rest in ensuring that it takes every measure to preserve the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Guyana, and in doing so, will ensure that there is full consultation with the opposition, the private sector, and civil society. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, honorable members. While a lot has been said outside of this House, I want to thank the Prime Minister for putting those facts on the record as the official position on this issue. Honorable Prime Minister, I understand you have another statement to make.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, fellow members of Parliament, today we gather here with heavy hearts as a nation that continues to be in mourning as we find ourselves grappling with the profound loss of our valiant servicemen. Mr. Speaker, these heroes dedicated their lives to the defense and protection of our beloved Guyana. Today I stand before you, both in my official role as Prime Minister and as a fellow citizen, deeply affected by the tragic helicopter accident that took the lives of Brigadier Retired Gary Beaton, Colonel Michael Shahood, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Charles, Lieutenant Colonel Sean Welcome, and Staff Sergeant Jason Khan, and injured Lieutenant Andy O'Crawford and Corporal Dwayne Jackson. First, Mr. Speaker, I wish to take a moment to extend my deepest condolences to the families and relatives of the fallen soldiers, and deepest sympathy to the Guyana Defense Force for the loss of their comrades. Their loss is immeasurable, and in this time of grief, we come together as a nation to share the burden of sorrow and support those who need it the most. Mr. Speaker, my condolences also reach Chief of Staff Brigadier Omar Khan and the entire GDF community, including Honorable Dr. Jennifer Westford, Member of Parliament, the wife of the late Brigadier Gary Beaton. In solidarity, we share in grief, offering thoughts to the leadership and colleagues of the fallen soldiers. May the GDF find strength, unity, and solace in the memories of these heroes. May the legacy of the fallen soldiers endure as a symbol of valor within the force, providing strength and inspiration during this profound sorrow. Mr. Speaker, I also wish swift recovery to Lieutenant Andy Michael Crawford and Corporal Dwayne Jackson, and offer sincere condolences for the loss of their comrades. We are grateful for their courage and resilience. It will be remembered with great respect and gratitude from our country. We're thankful that despite the adverse conditions and against the odds, they were able to return home to their families. Their commitment and duty to our nation will not go unnoticed. Brigadier Retired Gary Beaton, Colonel Michael Shahood, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Charles, Lieutenant Colonel Sean Welcome, and Staff Sergeant Jason Khan were not just members of our armed forces, but the embodiment of courage, dedication, and selflessness. They served with valor and love of country, ready to defend Guyana against any threat. Their bravery was not just a profession, but a way of life. Mr. Speaker, the incident unfolded as our forces were engaged in a vital mission to support troops on the western border. The challenges faced during the search and rescue operation were immense, with adverse weather conditions hindering progress. Yet, the perseverance of the search and rescue team, involving 3 helicopters and 7 fixed-wing aircraft, eventually led to the successful extraction of survivors and the fallen. Mr. Speaker, the following is an outline of the rescue mission undertaken following the accident. On December the 6th, 2023, helicopter 8 Romeo Alpha Yankee Alpha was conducting a command visit to troops on the western border, transporting a small amount of ration. Following the activation of an emergency locator transmitter signal, a search and rescue team comprising special forces was promptly deployed. Unfortunately, adverse weather conditions on December 6th led to the suspension of the rescue mission. Mr. Speaker, the crash site was located on Thursday, December 7th. Despite 2 unsuccessful attempts to insert the search and rescue team due to bad weather, 2 rescuers were eventually placed 0.8 miles from the site using an Omni helicopter. Hindered by weather conditions, the survivors, the deceased, and the search and rescue team spent the night together at the crash site. With improved weather on Friday, December the 8th, the search and rescue operation resumed. The survivors, deceased individuals, and the search and rescue team were successfully extracted by a winch on 8 Romeo Mike India Alpha and flown to Blake Slater airstrip. The survivors and deceased were further transported to Ogle using a GDF Islander and Skyvan aircraft. The search and rescue team was extracted from the Blake Slater airstrip on Saturday, December 9. Mr. Speaker, the 2 surviving servicemen have both been receiving medical attention following their extraction. We are thankful that they are both recovering and their prognosis seems optimistic despite the dangers they face. Lieutenant Crawford can walk and move unaided. He is receiving appropriate treatment and remains fully conscious, oriented, and coherent. In good spirits, Lieutenant Crawford is accompanied by relatives during this time. Corporal Dwayne Jackson, following a comprehensive examination over the past 48 hours, has been found to have a broken right 4th rib and 2nd-degree burns on both gluteus. While these findings are not life-threatening, Corporal Jackson is undergoing treatment, including dressings, antibiotics, and pain relief. He remains fully conscious, oriented, coherent, able to move around, and in good spirits, surrounded by family at GPHC. I must express, Mr. Speaker, our gratitude to all who played a crucial role in this operation. The Ministry of Health, Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation, the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, the Regional Security System, Omni Helicopters, Air Services Limited, Trans-Guyana Airways, Guyana Defense Force, and the Guyana Police Force. The success of this operation is a testament to the unity and collaboration of approximately 60 dedicated individuals who work tirelessly to bring closure to this tragic event. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we find ourselves standing together in the face of adversity, bound by grief and yet united by an unbreakable spirit that defined us as a nation. Mr. Speaker, we have since named the new road on the East Bank Demerara Heroes Highway. And we will continue to remember and honor the lives of our fallen heroes. Mr. Speaker, as I close, may the souls of Brigadier Retired Gary Beaton, Colonel Michael Shahood, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Charles, Lieutenant Colonel Sean Welcome, and Staff Sergeant Jason Khan rest in peace. May their families find strength and solace in the memories of their loved ones. And may our nation, united in grief, emerge stronger and more resilient in the face of challenges. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the opposition in this House from the inception indicated that we want government and opposition to work together to deal with this issue. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, while there is talk about consultation, there is not much of it in practice. Mr. Speaker, out of respect and appreciation for the importance of this issue to the people of Guyana, we have indicated that we intend to work together. I want to state here at the outset that I was briefed by the president on the visit or the meeting in St. Vincent, and I considered what happened to be more of a fait accompli, because by the time Prime Minister Gonzalez spoke, it was evident that this meeting was in the making months before. I'm just saying based on what Gonzalez said. He said from September. The English language is very explicit and can be lucid. The Prime Minister Gonzalez said that. May I continue to say and hope for the same kind of appreciation and respect that we give to the government when they spoke, be given to the opposition. Intelligence is not a word that is associated with you. The word intelligence is not associated with you, Kwame. Mr. Speaker, there are certain rumblings you just leave. Yes, I was saying, Mr. Speaker, the President did brief me on the meeting, and at that point, I said to the President that we are supportive of dialogue. I want to remind this House that we were in the forefront of saying there could and must be dialogue, but not on the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. Mr. Speaker, I want to turn to the resolution we passed in this assembly. It says, supports the government in the pursuit to ensure a peaceful and lawful resolution of the controversy before the International Court of Justice, and reject the proposal to return to any form of dialogue with Venezuela on the controversy outside of the process before the courts. And so we agree to that position. It is in that context when I spoke with the President, I said to him that we agree that there should be an engagement that is aimed at bringing peace and de-escalating the conflict. We believe we were on good ground and we continue to be on good ground. We are encouraged by what Dr. Sir Sridhar Ramphal, a doyen of diplomacy in Guyana and the world, he said, and I quote, "There was no call for any discussion on the Venezuela controversy over the Essequibo region of Guyana." We want to state here and now that we expect whatever discussions to occur should not involve the Venezuela-Guyana territorial controversy. In fact, we indicated that you can focus on bilateral issues. Mr. Speaker, it is our sincere hope that the summit will result in peace. And Kwame, common sense is not in your vein. I did forewarn. Mr. Speaker, we support dialogue. When people allow themselves to be made a pit bull, it's bad. Mr. Speaker, we support dialogue. We believe that there is a place for dialogue. But like we said, we hope at the end of this summit, there's the movement in the direction of peace and the de-escalation of conflict, but we do not compromise our position on the Guyana-Venezuela territorial question. We would like to see a clear agenda before the meeting. I believe it is in the interest of the people of Guyana, not the PPP, not the AP and UFC, but the people of Guyana, to have a clear agenda moving forward, so that when we arrive for discussion, there is little or no scope to bring anything in that isn't part of it. May I remind this House that Venezuela over the years tried a number of ways of getting this matter in the way they wanted it, with joint environmental action, among others, which we rejected over the years, and we should continue to reject them. May I also tell this House, if by any chance the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy is discussed, it means it would have been a breach of our common agreement. And as the opposition, we will not support such an outcome. We hope the government pays careful attention to what Sir Sridhar Ramphal had to say, because he made it very clear that there is no place for that kind of discussion there. And so we are not bound to support if the position is contrary to what we agreed to. Mr. Speaker, there are many issues that confront us if we're going to talk about consultation. We have consistently called for a Border Security Commission, not because we just want to be part of the process. We believe that if we are going to deal with this crisis and deal with it efficaciously, then we need to work together, at least at the policy level, so that the decisions made enjoy the support of both sides of the House. But we have not only advocated for the opposition. We said we want other stakeholders. We identified the professionals that could be there, and we didn't limit it to those professionals. We even said other relevant fields. Mr. Speaker, while we are not a powerful nation militarily, one cannot but underscore the need to develop our national defense infrastructure. As a country, we must show our willingness to defend ourselves. We must show the people who support us that we are prepared to take the requisite actions to support ourselves. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, I wish to remind the House that Article 33 of the Guyana Constitution states clearly that all Guyanese are duty-bound to defend our country. And I hope we move in that direction. And that is why we have been calling for the upgrade of the defense architecture. Mr. Speaker, our understanding of foreign policy is clear. We believe that the foreign ministry should be equipped to handle these issues. While we know that foreign policy is part of the preserve of the president, when you're dealing with an issue like the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy, you need every layer of involvement. We need our senior public officials to be involved. In fact, and I don't want to go too far, but even before I recognized that the summit was already planned, I was saying to the president, and I want to say it accurately, that I believe we should have first had senior officials meeting, then the foreign ministers meeting, before we arrive at the head of state. But having recognized that the summit was already planned, we believed, based on our analysis, that we should not and could not say no to such a summit. And it is on that basis we agree that the summit must go ahead with certain conditions. Mr. Speaker, Guyana needs a comprehensive campaign to reject every talk about Guyana Essequibo. We need to have every mission. We need to identify envoys who we will send out to put out there the justness of our case and reject Venezuela's. May I also say this? I worry sometimes that when we repeat everything that Venezuela says, we're giving them some legitimacy. I want to warn against that. I want to warn against that. The least we say about those measures, the better. What we need to do is to reject them out of hand and to have a proper campaign to ensure that it gets no legitimacy. As Venezuela pursues its spurious claim, we have got to be much more focused. I heard the Minister of Home Affairs talking about how you want to welcome Venezuelans and you want to give them the treatment they deserve. We agree, but we are stupid. We have to recognize that Venezuela is an adversary. And we are not involved in any xenophobia. We are not involved in any anti-Venezuelan sentiments. We are involved in the protection of Guyana's sovereignty and territorial integrity. To protect our sovereignty and territorial integrity, we need more from the Ministry of Home Affairs. We believe they must gather accurate information. I would have felt much better if the minister could have said 30 people are here, this is the condition they're under, these are entitled, these are not. But any attempt to link it solely to things like xenophobia, I think, is misplaced. We are responsible to the people of Guyana. And the people of Guyana are concerned. No longer is international relations and politics related to hard power. There is what is called soft power, made popular by Kevin and Nye, I think it was. And as we deal with this soft power issue, we must recognize that we are a small population and we have to be very careful with the amounts of Venezuelans we allow not only in Guyana, but especially in Essequibo. There is little or no sense in saying Essequibo belongs to us, but there is an increasing population of Venezuela in a contested area. I repeat, we're not being anti-Venezuelan, we're not being xenophobic, we are being realistic. And if we are realistic, we will accept that we need those measures. We need to have accurate information. We need to know where they are located. When you say to me that there isn't this person here and this person there, I travel the country just like you. I was just in Dartmouth. And in Dartmouth, and we have video evidence of it, the neighborhood didn't know who lived in the house. And when we checked, it was 17 Venezuelans, none of whom said they can speak Spanish. With my limited Spanish, I spoke to them. Now that is just one indication. I believe these are Waraos who know no English. They have no connection. One of the evidence of some form of connection to Guyana is they tend to speak English. Whether we like it or not, one of the trends we can note is those with Guyanese parentage tend to speak English because they grow up in a house in which English is speaking. But we are talking here about Venezuelans with no connection whatsoever to Guyana. And so, Mr. Speaker, we believe that this issue needs to be treated as a national issue, in which there is proper consultation. And let me say why I say this to you. I don't want to be involved in the government, but I want us to be able to exchange ideas so we end up with the best policy positions that can promote and protect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of this country. That is all we ask. I have no interest in sharing power on this issue. We have an interest in being consulted, ensure we reflect the will of the Guyanese people, and we move forward. Mr. Speaker, the fact that we could have passed a resolution unanimously in this House that prohibits us from discussing the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy is an indication that when we work together, we are better. This House has given guidance to the President in the form of that motion. And I acknowledge that he accepts it as guidance. But it is not guidance from the opposition. It's not guidance from the government. It is guidance from all of us. And that is what is critical. And so I would like to say here that consultation is critical. We are, in fact, in a crisis. If you accept that we're in a crisis, then we need to work together to get ourselves out of the crisis. It's always the tendency of government to believe they can do it alone. We must sometimes forego that urge for the greater national good. Because in the final analysis, if this goes wrong, it is not the PPP that will be affected. It is all of us that will be affected. All of us. Mr. Speaker, we have put on record our objection to Venezuela. We have accepted, Venezuela has accepted for 124 years that Essequibo is ours, from 1899 to present. We urge a campaign to tell the world that. And when I say tell the world that, I don't mean speaking in Guyana. I mean an orchestrated campaign in Venezuelan newspapers, Colombian newspapers, newspapers all around. Because as you engage Venezuelans, one of the things you recognize is they only know that this territory is their own allegedly. They do not know of an arbitral award. And that says something about us. And I'm not here blaming the PPP. You know we were in government before. Why I am raising it now is because now we have the resources to do it. And so we should do it. Because the president will make his efforts. But there is nothing in this world like when you touch down to an audience that is responsive to the facts. And if we put it out there, if we have that structured campaign to put information where it matters, then we'll be in a much better position. And I'm also suggesting that the rejection of this so-called Guyana Essequibo is something we should carry to every diplomatic person or institution we meet. I would say to you simply, it's important that we state it here, because I can tell you, we were told all the data on migration was there. The evidence doesn't suggest that. The evidence suggests that the information has migrated. The information has migrated. Mr. Speaker, they should have carried you. Mr. Speaker, on the migrant issue, we have to repeat. We need some form of control in Essequibo. We cannot continue as is. Mr. Speaker, we have to curb the influx. Additionally, we have to put the procedures in place to ensure the correct thing has happened. I am aware that if you're the child of a Guyanese and you return home, you can become a citizen. But you must produce the birth certificate, not the evidence that the parent would have born in Guyana. You then have to produce a birth certificate from Venezuela, which is lodged. It's lodged. And when that would have happened, then you would have established that that person is entitled to Guyanese citizenship. And so we are very concerned that we need to handle this in a much better way. Mr. Speaker, we operate based on good faith. When we agreed, first when I agreed with the president that we will give support, we then met. And when the meeting was held, it was agreed that there will be an active foreign relations committee that will address these issues. I want to say to this National Assembly that there has only been that one meeting after the president and us met. And since then, there has been none. How could you, at a time of a Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy, when you need to be meeting to crystallize ID, how could you have one meeting and do not call another? Mr. Speaker, sometimes I believe people come to this assembly just to produce a facade about democracy. Democracy is deeper than the facade. It has to have active consultation. It has to have proper discussion. It has to have compromise for us to arrive at a consensus. And I want to say this, Venezuela will pay attention to us. They will look for the cracks between the government and the opposition. And I warn the government not to show cracks. And some of the actions are showing a crack in that unity. Mr. Speaker, this issue is too big an issue to be partisan. This issue is too big an issue for trivial heckling. Mr. Speaker, We have a glorious opportunity to work together on this one issue, the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. There are other issues that we have to deal with. We will deal with them. But we undertook to work with this government in a united way in the interest of the people of Guyana. Let it be understood, that this unity that we talk about, we have no intention of letting it be cosmetic. We have no intention of promoting ourselves. We want to promote the interests of the people of this country. Speaker, I spent the weekend of the referendum in Essequibo. In fact, the Sunday I was there. And the big concern of our people, first I must say, I was glad that everybody I engaged in Essequibo, they were united in the position that Essequibo belongs to us and they don't want to be ruled by Venezuela. They were all united in that. And it is in this context I see the summit. I see the summit as reducing tension, working towards peace, and creating the kind of environment for Guyana and Venezuela to peacefully coexist. That is critical. But Mr. Speaker, I'm of the view that we need to develop an Essequibo policy. We seem not to have a clear policy as to how is it we will fend off whatever form of aggression Venezuela wants. We hope that it is understood that one of the elements of policy should be the people of that area with Guyanese, which would mean we have to put more significant types of development in the area. In the Pomeroon, the people complained that the Ghana Defense Force allows the Venezuelans to pass without any records, but they are subject to having to give their name, where they're going, etc. That does not send a good signal to the people who belong to the Essequibo. And so it's an issue that should be addressed. We have said before, we believe that Venezuela's approach is to seek to people the area so that it can carry out its nefarious actions. We have got to counter that. I anticipate that the government and us will engage at the policy level on how do we deal with these issues in Essequibo to ensure Essequibo not only continues to be ours, but we are actively in charge, in control, and creating little or no space for Venezuelan invasion. Mr. Speaker, I really had preferred that we had debated based on the motion we proposed, because I thought the debate would have provided for a good exchange on why you didn't tell Mark though? Yes.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, on the personal explanation, there's an issue, your position could be adumbrated or something you want to bring to the attention. But I've allowed you a lot of latitude. I think now we should come back to the issue at hand and move forward. Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, you need to protect me and I will help you. Yes. Yes. So I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, we need to address these questions in a serious way. Mr. Speaker, it will be remiss of me if I don't do a few other things. I am in support of the naming of the highway after our martyrs, if we want to call that, or heroes, whatever we call them. But you know, it would have been a good signal of consultation and working together if the opposition was invited. It is one thing to come and say you want unity, you want us to consult. Mr. Speaker, your protection. Mr. Speaker, your protection. Mr. Speaker, I hope it will be acknowledged. I hope it would be acknowledged. I hope it will be acknowledged. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, when you finish, I will continue. Mr. Speaker, I want to, on behalf of the opposition, express our condolences to the families of the dead. We did it before, and we endorse that element of the Prime Minister's statement. But I also want to suggest that we might be doing the two alive a disservice. You had 7 people in an accident. Unfortunate. 5 of them died, and we expected them to be honored. But we also expect that those 2 who would have survived and who would have contributed to them recovering the people, etc., to be given similar honors and respect. We come over, we sometimes come over, we come over sometimes as only paying respect to the dead. Mr. Speaker, I also believe that we should put the supportive mechanisms in place. Could you, Mr. Speaker, am I not entitled to put on the record the similar things that the Prime Minister put? Huh?
Mr. Leader of the Opposition, I'm hearing you loud and clear. Please.
Mr. Speaker, we urge that our actions not just be restricted to the heroes that died, we accept them as heroes, but we also need to see a significant focus on those who would have survived, giving them the requisite support to ensure you're suited for a menagerie. Mr. Speaker, I want to jump out of this menageric behavior by that person, not part of a menagerie. But Mr. Speaker, we need to pay careful attention to the unity we promised here. And I want to urge all. When they pray, you stay silent. Mr. Speaker, after the brain, I will continue. Mr. Speaker, like I'm saying, we have to pay careful attention to consultation and unity. They are the 2 things that will allow us to move forward as one against Venezuela. The President has engaged me, and I think On behalf of the opposition, I have been cordial. I think we have taken the high moral ground on this issue. I think there is in place the conditions for us to work together. But it has to be manifest in here and out there. And therefore, I want to say we support the government of Ghana and the people of Ghana on our general positions moving forward. It is our sincere hope that our Ghana-Venezuela territorial controversy will not be sacrificed or even mentioned at the summit, because it is before the International Court of Justice and it is rightfully there and should stay there. I want to say in closing that we have to become a matured people and approach things in a matured way. And sometimes sensible parents keep the infants away from big people activity. You are guaranteed our support in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Thank you.
Sir,
Honorable Minister of Education, Priya Manichan.
yes, Mr. Speaker Gill. Mr. Speaker, I just want to put on the record, I think this is a very important discussion. There are a lot of hurt families. We have seen His Excellency, the President and Commander-in-Chief, lead not only with strength, but with enormous compassion and empathy. And I think it's important for all listening to know that the two survivors are being treated as our precious resource, and that there are going to be honors in their name. I think when we have survivors, it's a good thing for us to give them a choice about how they might like to be honored. And so it's there's no need to call on us to do that. We're pushing at an open door. We're as one on that issue. The president was clear. The president was clear in his public speech yesterday for all who want to hear and who are receptive to this kind of commentary, that all of the persons who served as heroes on this flight will be honored. All of the persons will be honored. And I want to say at this time that it is important. I echo the opposition's leader's call that we should be one on this issue, but we should not be one in this house and then mount a platform at Stabroek and say something else. We have to be one all the time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, because of the particular impact of this, I will allow that comment. I'll give you a few moments to make your...
Mr. Speaker, just to say at Stabroek, we did everything in support of the Ghana-Venezuela territorial question, but it does not remove the fact that we are an opposition that has to speak on other issues, and that we did. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clerk.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the National Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the National Assembly and moved by Minister.
Mr. Speaker.
Introduction of bills.
Mr. Speaker, I crave your indulgence
Honorable Chief
and your guidance. The AP and UAFC submitted a motion of urgent public importance last Friday. Could you guide us in terms of how do we proceed with that motion, sir?
Yes, I discussed that with the Leader of the Opposition, and we had agreed that I'll allow him to make a statement, and that motion will not go forward. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, introduction of bills?
Yes, sir, introduction of bills.
Honorable members, the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to present the Arbitration Bill number 2023, Bill number 18 of 2023, a bill intituled An Act to Facilitate Domestic and International Arbitrations by encouraging the use of arbitration as a method of resolving disputes and for connected purposes. And I move that the bill be read the first time. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, AG. Let the bill be read the first time.
Arbitration Bill 2023, Bill number 18 of 2023.
Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to present the Criminal Procedure, Plea Discussion, Plea Agreement, and Plea Assistance Agreement Bill number 23, Bill number 19 of 2023, a bill intituled An Act to Establish a System of Plea Discussion, Plea Assistance, and Plea Agreements in Criminal Procedure and for matters connected thereto. And I move that the bill be read for the first time.
Let the bill be read the first time.
Criminal Procedure, Plea Discussion, Plea Agreement, and Plea Assistance Agreement Bill 2023, Bill number 19 of 2023. Public Business, Private Members' Business.
Honorable members, there are several matters under this heading that are on the order paper by members of the opposition, and they have asked that these matters be deferred. Honorable members, this would conclude our business for today. Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I ask that the House be adjourned to the 14th of December, 10 o'clock.
Honorable members, the House stands adjourned till December 14 at 10 a.m.
To we, not one blue sake.